My friend and classmate Sarah Kendall, and Sarah shared this great story when we were in seminary together. She said she took her grandson to a charismatic church where people were hooping and hollering and hallelujah and falling on the floor and speaking in tongues, and everybody was screaming and yelling, and at the end of the service she asked her grandson, she said, "Well, what did you think?" And he said, "I liked it. I'm just a little worried." And she said, "Well, what's the matter?" And he said, "Well, are you in, Grandma?" And she said, "Am I what?" And he goes, "Are you in?" And she said, "Well, I'm not sure I understand." And he said, "Well, everybody in there was yelling, 'I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. Are you in?'" And I thought, well, what a great way to hear the word amen. I'm in. I'm in. I'm in. And she looked at him and she said, "Yeah, I'm in." And so thinking about this concept of I'm in and affirming that as a thing to holler, I was thinking about fish and how fish don't know that they're in water. That's just where they are. They're in it. And that's kind of how we are in spirit, universe, allness, whatever word we want to use for it. We're in it. We don't really know that. And yet we're already in. And so I like to think of it as getting into the hot tub of God. When I become aware of being in it, I like immersing into the warmth and into the comfort and into the healing. So I call it the hot tub of God. And there are many ways to be in our lives, to be in our faith, in our walk. And then there's many ways to feel like we're not in. And how do we get in when we feel like we're not in? And how do we stay in when we figure out that we are in? So I came up with 3 ways. Because, ministers always do things in threes. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but there's always 3 points. So there's wading in. That's sort of the people who kind of stick a toe in. They're kind of testing the waters. Maybe they were raised without a spiritual belief, or maybe they were spiritually wounded in the past and are like, I'm not so sure. Or maybe they don't want to look foolish or vulnerable. And so they kind of test the whole God experience. And that would be this guy. One of my favorite movies, Bruce Almighty. I love when he's standing in the middle of the road thinking that everything's gone wrong and he yells, "Smite me, almighty smiter." And I love that he, we'll get into the next step, but his thing was, well, I'm not so sure, and, I kind of want it, kind of don't want it. And then when he's given it, how badly does he screw that up? And it reminded me, there's a Shel Silverstein, I don't know if you're familiar, Shel Silverstein wrote Where the Sidewalk Ends and a lot of really fun. He wrote some children's poetry, he wrote some poetry that's not so for children. But he wrote this poem called God's Wheel. And it said, "God says to me with kind of a smile, 'Hey, how would you like to be God a while and steer the world?' 'Okay,' says I, 'I'll give it a try. Where do I set? How much do I get? What time is lunch? When can I quit?' 'Give me back the wheel,' says God. 'I don't think you're quite ready yet.'" So this is one of those things where we want God to prove itself to us. It's the I'll believe it when I see it, as opposed to the I'll see it when I believe it. And for me, back in the days when I was doubting and not sure and kind of angry, I took a trip to the zoo. And for me, that was like one of those moments of, oh, there's God. There is God. Because when you see a rhino, well, more specifically, when you see a rhino urinating, phenomenal experience. Or just look at a giraffe or a warthog, for heaven's sakes. We could not create this. We're not that creative. We're very creative beings. Giraffe, warthog, there's something bigger than us. There's something outside the box, outside of all of it that's making this. So, wading in, testing, kind of not sure, checking it out. And then there's thrown in. This is from Life of Pi. So Jesus of Nazareth, according to some interpretations, was not really a willing participant in his experience. He was thrown in. In the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, he's portrayed as slightly bipolar. And then, of course, Nikos Kazantzakis, who wrote the book Last Temptation of Christ and the magnificent film Last Temptation of Christ, it shows his struggle. It wasn't his choice. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't know if it was God or Satan. He was kind of irritated. He was kind of scared. And it wasn't until he totally threw himself in and said, okay, fine, let's do this thing, that it started to change. Brother Francesco, St. Francis of Assisi, very similar. He was off going to be a warrior. And God said, go back to your city and you will be told what to do. And he faced humiliation from his family and from his community and from himself because he felt like he was a failure. And then standing in San Damiano, he hears the voice of God say, Francesco, rebuild my church, which as you see is falling down. And he mistook that for believing that he was supposed to rebuild San Damiano, which he did. But it was the Big C church that God wanted him to rebuild. So he was given this mission. Never asked for it, never said, hey, I want to go out and serve God. It was totally thrown in. And there have been so many others who have answered calls like that. Nelson Mandela is a great example. The man didn't want to spend a quarter of his life in prison. And yet what he did in there was create Mandela University, and he changed the world. Mother Teresa wanted to answer a call, wasn't really sure that what she wanted to do was what she ended up doing, and yet thrown in. So sometimes it's trial by fire. Sometimes we're absolutely thrown in and we learn the quote-unquote how God works after the crisis has settled. And again, it's, we were saying I'll believe it when I see it versus I'll see it when I believe it. It's if I survive this, then I'll believe. Which actually turns into I believe, and that is how I will survive. So it's proving that same thing again, but just a little bit more intense. And sometimes the former works. Sometimes we discover through a trial that we really did have the power within us to carry us through it. And that truth is, of course, that we always had the power. So, although we were thrown in, everything worked out because the universe is always conspiring for our good. The universe is not conspiring for us to fail. What's really helpful to know when you're thrown in, though, is that there's somebody holding space. Someone or something that is holding space for us. And it can be a human being, or it can be just spirit leaning in, knowing, okay, something larger than me has got this, and I just need to lean back and trust. And it can make any moment seem more manageable. There was an experience that Heather and I had back when we were first together in 2009. And we were driving down Abbott, just chatting, having a great time. And this car came whipping out of a driveway towards us, overcompensated across the road, went back, overcompensated again, and then flipped over into the ditch. Before I even had a chance to go, wow, Heather had the Jeep pulled over in emergency park, jumped out and said, call 911, and ran. Okay. I was the space holder. She just went. She was on top of that car, pulling people out, climbing all over. The engine's still running, and she's on the car. And I'm, of course, on 911 going, I don't know what road I'm on. I have no idea what's going on. A car flipped over. I'm, completely useless. And yet, I was able to, say, something happened. Just follow my voice, But she was able to just throw herself in there because she knew that I had the lifesaver. I was holding the rope. I was the space holder, the ground holder for her, so that she could just do what she does best, which is get in there and fix it. And she never checked. She never even looked back at me. She gone. And it was amazing. It was amazing. The paramedics got there and they're like, "Ma'am, please get off the car." But there's still some. They're like, "We got it. Get off the vehicle." It was very impressive. They got there pretty soon after she was climbing. So that's thrown in. And if you don't have another person to ground you, just know, and I'll know for you, that something larger than you is holding the rope. And so then lastly, after thrown in, is diving in with intention. I spoke earlier about Brother Francesco being thrown in and hearing the call. And what's amazing about him to me is that he answered. He got thrown in, he heard the call, and he didn't go, nah, it's too much, too big, sorry. It's freaking me out, you're scaring me, I'm out. He dove in head first. He gave up his family, he gave up everything he owned, his church, his life, his possessions, his clothing, everything, to dive into doing the work of God. This photo was taken from inside the cave that he used to hang out in. Did you get up there? You did. Awesome. In a place called Erema della Carceri. And he used to climb up the mountain and go to this cave. And I'll tell you, when you go in there, he's there, he's there, he's there. And so I've been really excited to be watching the new Pope. Because when he took Francesco's name, I was a little nervous. I'm like, bud, you're messing with my role model. You know, not so sure. And yet, look what he's doing. Diving in. He's firing people. He fired a bishop because he was too obsessed with money. Fired him. He is talking about including women. He is talking about, let's let go of the politics and all the news stories. Let's feed the poor. Let's get out in the street. He said, if your shoes don't get muddy, you're not doing God's work. The Pope said this. You know, he won't ride in the Pope Mobile and he won't sit in the big chair. He's diving in to the experience. And I'm fairly certain, fairly confident that all the people who voted him in are like, what did we do? How do we get this guy out of here? It's amazing. It's so exciting. And so this is that experience of the full lean into God. I joke that God is the ultimate trust fall partner. For those of you who have ever taken an acting class, you're like, okay, trust falls, drop into my arms. Okay, no, it's not happening. Never succeeded in the trust fall. And yet I joke that Spirit is my ultimate trust fall partner, because I know no matter what, I'm held. And so I can experience something, I like to call them life's internships. Some people call them challenges, some people call them crisis. But I like to call them internships because it's like, oh, it's on-the-job training. It's, you know, we're in it. You can't step out of your life and go, I'm having a crisis, I'll be over here. You know? No, you got to keep going to work, you got to keep paying your bills, you got to keep functioning and living and doing your thing. And so it's like an internship. And so God's there with you on that. And the benefit of diving in is that we truly experience who we really are, which is spiritual beings having this awesome human experience in some really fine-looking Tupperware. I mean, check it out, you know. We have got these great shells, these great containers for our souls this time around. And so that's who we really are. We're not traffic, and we're not Black Friday sales, and we're not Four Below, and we're not any of those things. We're just kind of floating through going, oh, this human thing, check it out. You know, it's really neat. And so we become vehicles and instruments and channels for Spirit to do its work and for us to do our work with each other and for each other. So we got some diving tools. I love this slide. It says, if you don't like where you are, move. You're not a tree. So often we hear people say, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like that, I don't like my job, I don't like my life, I don't like, you know. Well, then change. It's not going to be easy, maybe, although it might be. You never know. You got to dive in. But we're not locked into anything. We can always make an adjustment in what we're doing. I always talk about my friend Deborah. I'm going to have to tell her I gave her another shout out. I always talk about my friend Deborah, who just hasn't quite figured out where she wants to be yet. And so she moved from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And now she's moved along the West Coast. And now she's going to move to an island. And she's just, I'm just looking. I'm not sure. And she is the most rooted individual who is not rooted. She knows that she's not a tree, that she can go if she needs to go. So we have these tools, these spiritual tools. We have ways that we can figure out how to dive more as opposed to toe in the water more. And one of them is developing, oh, this made me laugh. This actually made me laugh out loud when I typed this. Developing and honing the practice of releasing attachment to what is not working for you. Now, the reason why this made me laugh was because in parentheses I wrote, start practicing by driving on Diamond Boulevard during the next 24 days. Yeah. If you want to release attachment to your experience, just drive up and down Diamond between now and Christmas. Because it's insane. It's insane. Or not. But that's diving in, is saying, okay, here we go. I'm going to do this and I'm not going to yell at anybody. We used to joke about that in California. Every store we went to in San Francisco, it was like, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry. I won't finish the other part, but I'm not in a hurry. Everybody is a child of God. Here we go.
That's her version.
That's her version's a little different, but same idea. So practicing release of attachment to whatever it is that's making you go, yeah. Visioning, for those of you who aren't familiar with a practice called visioning, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith created this experience called visioning, and it's not visualization, it's actually getting the monkey mind out of the way and literally asking Spirit, all right, what do I need to know about this particular thing? And then receiving. And it could be words, it could be images, it could be completely bizarre, unrelated items. But the more you do it, the more the messages become clearer. And there's some really great practitioners out there. Ray Jordan in California is an awesome, awesome vision teacher. And we've got people in town at the Alaska Center that do it. So if you want to know more, ask me, I'll direct you. Of course, meditation, getting quiet long enough to hear something. Just letting it come through. And then contemplation, which is something that I really enjoy, and that's learning from other people's journeys. So reading someone's books, or listening to TED Talks, or taking that info in from sacred texts, or new thought teachers like Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle and Ralph Waldo Emerson. And then using fiction that inspires you, like The Alchemist, anything by Paulo Coelho, The Shack, Don Quixote. Some of the great pieces of literature can actually fuel us and give us something to contemplate about our own lives. And then the other thing is, the big question to ask ourselves is, how do we know when we're in? How do we know when we're in, and how will we know the difference? And so I'll share with you some thoughts that I had about when I realized, okay, this moment I'm in, or I'm closer. And one of them was being able to give thanks for my food when I was in public. Because being raised Jewish, we don't do grace, we don't do blessings. I mean, we do them on Friday nights, but you don't do regular meal blessings. And I used to be really uncomfortable and really embarrassed. And, what are other people going to think of me when I do this? And I remember that moment where I just was like, you know what? I'm really grateful for this, and I need to just take a moment to acknowledge that I'm grateful for this. I don't care what anybody else thinks. And then I started to appreciate when I saw other people doing it and realized how I used to judge them. And now I get it. So that was a moment. Becoming more quiet, which of course doesn't seem like that because I'm standing up here yammering at you, but getting, experiencing the release of the need to talk is a huge thing for me. And also checking my words before they come out. Like, I'm about to say something, it's like, is that going to work? Or you can't take them back. you can fix it when it does come out and go, oh, I didn't mean it that way, and just kind of doing some amending. Being truthful in my words, becoming more authentic in the way that I talk with people and listen to people and share. And then reminding myself that in any situation, there's two appropriate responses: gratitude or prayer. That, for me, that was like, oh, yeah, because like last week I was talking about not complaining. So you kind of hone it in. It's like, all right, this is happening. Am I grateful, or do I need to send prayer into this situation? And those, to me, that became like, those are my options, the top two. So I want to close with a poem that was shared at seminary. I'm taking a monthly, bi-monthly, every 2 months, bi-monthly class at my seminary, and they shared this thread, and we did a lot of meditation and contemplation and discussion on it. And did I say poem? I did. Whew. The cold is shrinking my brain. It's called The Way It Is by William Stafford. I'm just going to, there we go. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You never, ever let go of the thread. So let's move into prayer. Oh. Hold on a second. There we go. Taking a deep breath and letting it go. And taking one more deep breath and letting that go. The most important thing to know in moments of prayer and moments of connection is that we're never really not in. Because Spirit doesn't know anything other than to experience its life through us and as us. So there's always a connection. We're always holding the thread. We're always, always connected in to the one essence, that one love, that one energetic force that has so many names. And it's only our experience of feeling disconnected that causes us to feel like we're not in. The truth is, we are always in. And not only are we in with Spirit, we're in with each other and our lives, our experiences, everything that happens around us and in us. And so this week I was asked to hold in prayer several people that I'm holding now powerfully in the High Watch. That I know what is happening within their bodies and around their bodies, that is all divine unfoldment, and that God, Spirit, allness, oneness, love, the path, the way, wholeness, is acting through each and every person that is encountering those people who are reaching out. For anyone in this room, or anyone that anyone in this room knows, for anyone in consciousness who is reaching for the rope, I know now that Spirit is already enveloping them in love and light. I know that already anything that needs shifting is shifted, that anything that needs revealing is revealed, that wholeness and healing is taking place, that financial concerns are washed away, relationships are healed, love is revealed. And all this is possible because we allow it to be through us. Our life experiences are co-created through our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our consciousness, our willingness to sink into that hot tub of allness and love and God and say yes to everything. Yes to all of it. Knowing that no matter what it looks like, Spirit's got our back. And good is taking place. With gratitude and love, possibility and hope, knowingness and trust. I affirm this to be true. And I simply breathe it out by saying, Ashe. Thank you, God. Ashe.